Welcome to LabMinutes.com. We currently have a functioning VSG installation from our previous lab videos, but only with permit all security policy. In this video, we will look into a more complex design and trying to explore different options that we can use to construct an access list policy. For our lab setup, we still have a compute firewall at the App1 organization level. Next, for our test servers, we're going to split them this time into 3 different zones: web zone, database zones, and the management zones. So the two web server, web 1 and 2 in the web zones would not be able to communicate to one another, but we want them to be able to ping to the database zones. Now for the NMS servers in the management zone, we want it to be able to SSH and browse the web of the servers in both web zones and database zones, while we do not want any traffic being originated from the database zones. And again, all of these will be happening in a single VLAN, VLAN 601 with the IP 10.0.10/24. And we're still going to be using the same port profile that we used in the previous video with the basic security profile. Now let's log into the vNMC web interface. Okay, just like when you create an access list on the ASA firewall, you'll probably start with the components, which is the object group, and that's what we're going to do first. So we go under the policy management and service policies. And the first type of object group that we are going to create is to allow the ICMP and TCP/22 and 80 protocols. And we are going to do that at the DC1 level. So here DC1, and the object group is located under policy helper here with the object group. So we'll click add object group, and let's call this OBJ DB service, and the attribute type is going to be network, and the attribute name is protocol. And to add ICMP, we know it's protocol number 1, and I believe these are in alphabetical order as well, so let's look for ICMP here. We'll click OK, and then for our second object group is OBJ. This is for the management service, from the management zones to the 2 other zones. Here will be network and port. And we say one port 22, as well as port 80. Okay, and click OK. Alright, so the next type of object group we are going to create is to group the web servers, as well as to represent the whole App1 subnet. And since it's IP specific, we're going to create that right down at the App1 level. So again, under the policy helper object group, we'll create, and we'll call it OBJ web SRV. Okay, attribute type will be network, and the attribute name is IP address. Okay, and the 2 IP address of our web server is .32 and .33. So here with IP address, we'll select range. It'll go from 10.0.1.32 to 10.0.1.33. Okay, and that's going to be a web server object group. And they'll create one more. Then that's for the subnet. We'll call it OBJ App1 Net. Type network, again, IP address. And this time we're going to do it by prefix. Okay, and that will be 10.0.1.0. And subnet mask is /24, so there's no need to change. Click OK, and then OK. Next, we're going to create the zones, 2 zones, DB and management. And we're going to do this at the DC1 level. And it's just want to show you switching back and forth here between DC1 and App1. And in your design, you just need to pick an appropriate organization level to create this under. So for DC1, we'll click zones, we'll add zones. And the first one we're going to do is zone DB. And we're going to do that based on the VM attributes, or the name of the VMs. And we know that the DB server has the DB in the name. So we're going to, under VM, We'll pick VM name and we'll do contain DB. Okay. And okay. The next zone is the management. And this time we're going to use a user-defined attributes. And this is basically just like a tag that you assign to a particular port profile. So any VM that's assigned to that port profile will be receiving this particular tag. So far we haven't created any, so we're just going to do it right now. And the tag or the attributes, we're going to call it management PC. We want that to be equal MGMT for that to be considered to be in a management zones. And we'll see later on how to create those attributes. So for now, let's just deal with the conditions. So that's for the 2 zones, and the last zones we need to create is for the web zones. And we're going to do this based on IP. Again, since it's IP specific, we're going to do right down at the app1 level. So we'll add a zone, and that is called zone-web. For condition, we'll do network and IP. Since we already specify another object groups that incorporate both of the web servers, we're going to do a member of. And you can see how we can also, although we are creating a zone, we can also reference it back to another object group. And that's the obj web srv. Okay, and click OK. So at this point, we should have all the components that we need to construct an access list. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a ACL policies. And we're going to do that at the app1. The first ACL policy we're going to be creating is the one within that prevents the traffic within the web zones. So here go ACL policy, and then you add an ACL. And we're going to call this one ACL web zone. And the first rule is for denying traffic between the web servers. So we're going to call it deny web srv. So we'll pick drop by default. We'll make sure we lock it so we can see. And as far as picking the source and destination, we're going to do that based on the object group. So member of object web srv going to pretty much itself. So member of again to object web srv. Okay. Make sure it looks right. Then we'll click OK. And the next ACL policy we are going to create is for the interzones. So this will be from web zone to database zones and the management zone to the other 2 zones. Okay, so we're going to call it ACL interzone. And the first rule is for web to DB. So we'll call it web to DB. And we said we want to allow ICMP only. So permit. And for protocol, since we created an object group for it, so we're going to make it a member of OBJDB service. And the source is going to be zone web. And the destination will be zone DB. Okay, so that's for the web to DB, and then we have to do management to the web and the DB. So one more. And we'll call this one management or MGMT to all. It'll be permit. For protocol, it will be TCP. And then the source is from zone. Management. And this is going towards the whole subnet. So this time we are going to utilize another object group that we created earlier with the app1 net that just represent the whole subnet of app1. And also we want to reference the network ports that we create in the object group. So member of management service, and that's TCP port, that's just port 22 and 80. Okay, and then just like any other ACL that you create, we probably want to put deny all at the bottom and also lock that so we can see what's being blocked. And since deny all is so generic, we're going to be doing that up at the tenant 1 level where we already have the previously created ACL permit all. So just right next to that, we're going to create one called ACL deny all. Then add rule. And just call it deny all for the first rule. And all we need just to lock it because it's dropping by default. The next thing we need to do is putting all those ACL policy into the ACL set, but in the previous video with the basic service security policy profile, we already have created a ACL policy set right here called app1. We need to just modify that. And before we had the ACL permit all in there, now we're going to need to pick the 3 ACL that we just created, move it over, and make sure the deny all goes to the bottom. And with the vZone, we probably want that on the top. Next, we're going to go back to the service profile, and under the security profile, right here, that we already have the ACL app1 apply. On the attribute, this is the one that is currently applied to all of the test servers. Since we're using user-defined attributes, management or MGMT PC, and we just need to get something else that's not MGMT, because if it's MGMT, it will fall under the MGMT or management zones. Just put something like other. And now we have to create a new, so let me save that. Now we have to create a new security profile. Okay, we're going to give it a name, and this is going to be attaching to the management or NMS VMs and place it into the management zones. So we'll call it sec profile app1 MGMT. We're going to use exact same the policy sets. The only difference is we're going to give it a different attribute that's going to be matching the object group that will place it under the management zones. Management BZ and MGMT. Click OK, and then OK. Now we have to go back to the Nexus 1000V and create another port profile. So let's do show run. Just going to copy the one that we already have. Port profile 601. Show run port profile. And use the same name, but we're going to put MGMT here. Everything else should be the same. That should be the same as well. But for the security profile, we're going to make it use the one that we just created with the MGMT. Make sure the name is correct. Yes. And then no shot, and then state enable. Okay, if you go to vCenter, you can see it's been published to vCenter already. And for the NMS, we're going to change or move the adapter to the new profile we just created to put that in the management zone right here. Okay, make sure that's completed. And go back to the resource management. Make sure the compute firewall is still associated and the config is apply. So now let's go to the VSG here and do a show run policy. And you can see all of the policy that we just configured has been pushed down from the VNMC to the VSG. This is the vZone, and then we have 2 rules under the inner zones, and we have the deny all at the bottom. Okay, sometimes we do show zone, VSG zone. You can see we have each of our test VMs has been placed to their respective zones with the DB1 in the Zone DB, NMS in the Zone MGMT, and the 2 web server in the Zone web. So now we're ready to start testing. So let me bring up the syslog server so we can kind of monitor the activity that might be going on. So let's start off with the web 1. And if you remember from a previous video that we have the permit all security policies, we could pretty much ping anything from web 1. And now let's try to ping itself, which is 32. So you can still ping that. If you're trying to ping 33, you can see that not only did the ping fail, we immediately get the syslog message on the background. And right there is being blocked by the web zones. And that's because we not allow any web servers to talk to one another. Now let's try to ping the database server. And you can see that is working. And that's because we're allowing the web zones to talk to the database zones using ICMP. Okay, but if you ping .16, which is NMS, and you can see we also get a deny syslog message as well. Okay, same thing. Oh, let's try telnet 33. So that's not working. Let's try 34 that we were to ping earlier. You can see that's being blocked too. So the only protocol that's allowed between web and DB is ICMP. And I'm sure the 16 is being blocked as well. And now the last thing I'm going to try is port 80. Okay, so that's not working. You can see every time it gets denied, there's a lock message being generated. And 16. Okay, so that seems to be working as expected. Close that down and clear it. And let's try it real quick on the web 2, which is supposed to get the exact same behavior as web 1. We just want to do a quick verification on that. Okay, so ping 10.0.132. See, that's not allowed. You can ping the database server, which is expected. You cannot ping the NMS. I'm just going to try, and I'm not going to go through all those tests again. The only thing I want to try is to telnet to 10.0.134, which is a database on port 22, and just to show that only ICMP is allowed. Okay, so that's for the web 2. Now let's move on to the NMS. Okay, and NMS should have accessed on TCP 22 and 80 to everything. So let's start off with the ping. Let me clear the background too. So there you go. 0132, that's being blocked. 33 is being blocked, and 34. So you can see ICMP is not working to any of the hosts from NMS. But if you go and do telnet 10.0.132 port 22, you can see that's working. 33 is working as well, and 34. Okay, so that's to test port 22. Next, we're going to test port 80. So we're just going to bring up a web browser and type in the IP of the 3 hosts. The first one is web 1, 32. See, that's working. 33 is working, and 34, which is database server 1, is also working. Okay, so everything looks good from the NMS. The last test we're going to do is from the DB1. And then we're just going to do, let me clear the back. Do a simple ping to 10.0.132. It's being blocked. 33 is being blocked. 34 itself is okay, and 16 is also being blocked. Okay, so try telnet. Okay, 2 is being blocked, 33 is blocked, and 34 is itself, and that's why it's working, and 16 is the NMS, and that's being blocked. Okay, so from the database server, you cannot pretty much access or initiate any traffic to any other zones, just like how we design it. Okay, now let me want to go back to the NMS real quick, and let's have a ping going. Well, actually, no, ping it's not allowed, so let's actually do telnet instead. 10.0.134.22. And if you hop onto the VSM and then do show the service connection, you can see right there with the connection that the VM is seeing. Go to VSG and let's see, show service path connection. And right there, these are in the information regarding the vPath that the VSG connection that's been sent over through vPath that the VSG is seeing. Okay, so we just verified that everything works as expected. Now that we have gone through the configuration of the VSG, you can see that the most difficult part about VSG is probably the design of the security policy. But once you get that figured out, the rest is just putting them into ACL. Since your policy can be pretty much anywhere in the hierarchy, you want to develop a good design methodology and even naming convention to make it easier for your troubleshooting. So that's pretty much wraps up our video on VSG Advanced Security Profile and Policies. Just remember you can sign up on our website to receive updates on the latest lab videos and get access to additional lab contents. Thank you for watching LabMinutes.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video.